So we're here in Castleton, the heart of the Peak District. This, when I was growing up, for me was the place I loved riding my bike the most. I used to come here with my granddad and my brother. My granddad was a builder and he'd done a job for some guy down the road, and he'd brought the guy, instead of paying him, had given him a racing bike, and my granddad used to ride when he was younger, so he kind of got into it. So I always used to look at this bike in my granddad's hallway and assume that one day I'd be good enough to kind of ride the Tour de France on this bike. In terms of me getting into racing and, you know, becoming a professional cyclist, I think I always assumed that I would become a professional cyclist. I didn't, certainly when I was young, I didn't have the kind of, I didn't think that it wasn't possible. The first truly professional team I rode for would have been Endura back in 2003, and we're based in Milan in Italy. And in terms of diversity of the peloton, there really wasn't much diversity. It was generally 95% European cyclists with a few Colombian cyclists. I think just because it's a bit of a close-knit community and cycling is very team orientated, and you need to be on one of the biggest teams in the world to go to the biggest races in the world, and I just don't think they're as open as they could be to different diversities. And you know, it's easy, I think, well, a lot of the time they're not completely closed off to the idea of you being a good rider, or they'd rather see their friends and they'd rather see a French rider do well in a French team. So I mean, that was a big issue as well when I was, you know, when I first became a professional cyclist, that all the big teams were French, Spanish or Italian, Belgium, and they just wanted riders, or they wanted mainly riders from their own country, so you would have to be a lot better than a French rider or a, you know, Spanish rider, and then they'd probably, you know, give the place to a white rider over a coloured rider, so it was definitely a bit of an uphill struggle. Change needs to come from everywhere, doesn't it? You know, it needs to come from the kind of fans, I guess, demanding it of the brands, of the sponsors, that they see some diversity within the sport. Of, you know, throughout everything, you don't see, I can't think, Russell Williams probably the only black cycle commentator I've ever seen in my life. So I mean, there's that side, isn't there, as well, the media, the commentators. I think the governing bodies could do, you know, a lot more. British cycling have got a good reach, haven't they? It's easy for them to go into schools and universities, and I wouldn't say cherry pick, but certainly make cycling available to everybody. I think you know, it's not just cycling, is it? I think throughout society there's a bit of a drive to be more correct and to see more diversity and gender equality. I mean, there's certainly been a big change in the kind of gender equality in cycling over the last 20 years or, you know, 25 years that I've been involved in it. In terms of my own career, I think it was very difficult, certainly early on. I mean, it didn't seem to matter how good you were, there just wasn't much acceptance, or you could have, and I had an awful lot of good rides which I thought were good enough to get on good teams, and the doors didn't open. And it's hard to say it's exactly because of my race, but I mean, for example, I won Dover International Cyclocross when I was 18 as an under 23, so kind of riding up a category, riding for GB, and the next cyclocross race I didn't get picked for GB, and when I asked them why I'd not been picked, they said, we want to give everybody a chance, but professional sport's not really about, you know, it's about picking the winners, isn't it? Not giving everybody a chance. And I'd have been the youngest rider on the squad, and in that first race the best rider on the squad, and really for me that ended, you know, I never really rode cyclocross after that. So I imagine there's lots of other people that have, you know, been good, and then when the doors are closed on them and it's such an uphill battle, probably don't bother continuing to push on. I think going forward, to encourage more diversity within cycling, I think initially it needs to be offered to a far wider range of the population. I think we need to have more role models and make it more relatable to people of different ethnic backgrounds and genders. And I think people that are in a position to, you know, pick the teams and select the riders need to be open to who's the best rider, as opposed to, as I think it can be a lot now, who's the kind of best fit for their team, or who fits in easiest, you know. I think that would really, you know, it'd be a big help if they could take a more open view.